So today I'm going to talk about the indie darling that is Sea of Stars, the game that a lot of critics and reviewers have said the same thing. It's hard to find something that's wrong with this game. Personally, I had no problem finding some things that were wrong with the game, but let's find out if it's enough to turn this goat into a sheep. But first, I just want to thank all of you guys for your comments, your likes, your views. It means the world to me, and it's thanks to all of you that this community continues to grow. And I can never thank you guys enough. Anyway, let's get into Sea of Stars. So in Sea of Stars, you can play as one of two characters. Honestly, it doesn't matter. You pretty much control both of them anyway. But you can choose between Zale or Valerie. Both of them are solstice warriors. Now in this world, there are these evil creatures named Dwellers that pretty much just feast upon the living creatures of this world, including humans. They essentially find themselves a nice little area to nest, and they beckon humans or other creatures anytime that they want a meal. So the solstice warriors are the only ones who can actually fight the Dwellers, and the reason why is because they have magic. Dwellers can only be hurt by magic, and namely, magic without magic. It sounds confusing, but it's really not. In fact, we'll go over it in the combat. We are welcome to either Zale or Valerie, and both of them born on a different solstice. Valerie born on the winter solstice, and Zale born on the summer solstice gives them innate powers that are only exclusive to them. For instance, Zale can control fire, and Valerie can use lunar magic. So our two heroes are more than excited to become solstice warriors. The problem is while growing up on this island, they become really good friends with a kid named Garl. And all three of them plan to be heroes. They want to venture the world and rid it of its evil. But unfortunately, Zale and Valerie have to train. You see, yes, they have the ability to control magic, but it's wild and untamed. They need to learn how to fight. All of this has to be done, and what they believe is only going to be maybe a year or two turns into 10 years, essentially transposing them from children to adults. Although over this decade, Garl has not given up the dream. In fact, he's been training himself. And as soon as Zale and Valerie are able to explore the open world, they're met with their best friend, Garl, who has shown that he has been training, and they're more than excited to have him, although they are a little bit apprehensive because they know that he can get hurt worse than they can. But he proved himself by being a warrior chef. And not only that, but he's incredibly strong. So as we start to control them, they're after one thing, the approvance of the Elder Mist. And believe it or not, this is still part of what would be the demo in the game. So don't worry, no spoilers like I said. I will say that they do receive the approval of the Elder Mist, and they're able to go on and track down the final Dweller. The Elder Mist even gave his approval to Garl. The biggest concern is that tracking down this Dweller might be pretty easy. The problem is where there used to be a lot of solstice warriors, now there's only 4 of them, and this could turn into be quite a battle. As we follow the trio on their escapades, a few things really stick out about this game. Number 1, visuals. This game is incredibly beautiful. I've seen a ton of comparison between the 2D HD graphic style and this incredibly detailed pixel art, and honestly, I don't think that that's a fair comparison. There are 2 different art styles, there are 2 different visual presentations, and both of them have things that are really cool about them. But I will say, it is really cool to see how better pixel art can look when a team really takes the time to add in those details to really make this game pop, and it does. This game is, like I said, incredibly beautiful. It really makes you realize just how much work went into the detail of each character, environment, setting, enemy, every single thing that is in this game just looks beautiful. Not to mention the fact that every now and then you'll get an animation cutscene that just looks really cool as well, and I think it really complements the art style. At the same time, it really enhances the user's experience just to give them a different version of these characters and of this world. And without a doubt, there's nothing really to complain about when it comes to graphics. I played most of it in handheld. In fact, no, I take that back. I played all of it in handheld, and it really held up, whether it be on a big screen or in my Switch OLED. So as we look at combat for this game, it's pretty much simple turn-based mechanics without a lot of bells and whistles, which to be honest wasn't something I enjoyed. I like a game that has a lot of buffs, debuffs, and allows for more strategy, as where this game is a little bit more direct. In fact, the biggest thing about it is the triggers. And if you're an old school RPG fan, you'll know what I'm talking about, but if not, I'll explain it real quick. So when you attack a character, you have to time it just right and hit the attack button again, and this will actually cause MP. This will cause magic without magic, plus extra bonus damage. It's incredibly important to master this skill, as it really matters, as you can tell. For one, you're not able to beat the dwellers unless you're able to do this, and at the same time, you can defend in the same way and you'll take less damage. And this doesn't just count for the regular attacks, this is also in your skills as well. So it's really a good idea to kind of master these skills as much as you can, and it really does come down to your ability to time the attacks or defense. I've been in multiple battles where I was killed just by random enemies, especially later on in the game, as enemies will have these shields up and you'll have to perform certain moves or inflict certain damage to break these shields. Now typically these enemies are also casting a powerful spell or about to do a powerful move, so it's imperative that you break these spells, especially if you're kind of low on health or you just entered the battle. It can really put you at a disadvantage. And yeah, there's been times, especially like with the boomerang, which is one of the lunar spells that Valkyrie does, where you have to time the hit perfectly, and essentially you're almost transported into like a futuristic version of Pong, where you have to bounce this lunar spell back and forth between up to 4 or 5 enemies multiple times so that you can break the shield that they have. But to be honest, I really like how interactive the combat is. I love turn-based combat, and yes, I love the aspect of different strategies, but when that's not there, just being able to click buttons at the right time really pulls you into the game, and it gives you something more than just a passive playthrough. And I think by bringing you in on this, they only increase your interest in the game and in the battle alone, making each battle its own little mini game, and honestly something that you truly enjoy. So most of the game's music is pretty low-key and docet, but I will say most of the memorable tracks are actually performed by your own pirate band. And anytime that you're in a bar or a setting where you can hear them, you can actually walk up to them and demand that they play some sheet music that you found, basically unlocking another song. Now this is cool and everything, but I do wish that we could hear these songs more than just at specific times, and there was a little bit more control over that. Now I understand that the game doesn't really allow for you to have a traveling band, so to speak. I wish I could say more in that regard, but I can't. But from the songs that you find to the songs that the pirate band just plays themselves, it's really memorable and awesome. In fact, the soundtrack itself could be something that a lot of people would be interested in. But the actual game music, the music that accompanies most of your exploits, is fine. It's not anything negative, it's just nothing great either. So yeah, there's a little bit give and take when it comes to music in this game. Well, where's the negative? I said I found some negative stuff about this game. Where is it? To be honest, it's nitpicky. A lot of it is. In fact, this first one has to go with something that is actually something I really enjoy about it and something I really dislike about it. First off, when you're exploring different dungeons and different areas, it's kind of like a puzzle or platformer in a way, which I enjoy that. That just adds a different level to an RPG game. It's not incredibly difficult to understand or hard to get through, but it does just add a little bit more to the game. Now, I will say though, that at the same time, there's no map. You have no map at all when you're in these dungeons, and that sort of sucks and takes away from something, especially if you're trying to just complete everything, you're trying to find everything. Not having a map to 100% really takes away from a lot in this game, especially when it comes to the fact that another big problem of mine is there's really no grinding. Yes, you can go back to old levels and find some enemies that you can grind out some XP on. The problem is it really does take quite a bit of time to go back and forth in this game. So to go back to an old area that you haven't been to for a while and just grind for a little bit can take longer than the grinding is even worth, as you have to figure out where you were and then navigate yourself back to where there might be 1 or 2 enemies. Now, as far as I can tell, they do scale with you, but still, it can take you a good 4 or 5 minutes to just go and find 1 or 2 enemies, and that kind of sucks, to be honest. That's a lot of time when you really start adding up exactly what you're getting in return for your XP. The game is just really linear, and for me, that's another issue I have with the game. I don't want a complete open world game, but I do like an RPG to be a little bit more open. I want to be able to find more equipment and find more stuff, really expand my characters and build them out. And needless to say, that with it being so linear, you also don't find as much equipment. And that too is something I have a complaint with. Most of your new weapons and things of that nature, you'll just buy. And that's cool, I get it, but it's also awesome when you do a quest to unlock different weapons and make yourself even stronger. And seeing how that's not really in this game, that sort of sucks. Another issue I have is namely story related. I'm not going to get into specifics, but there's definitely some gigantic loopholes in the story, as well as there just being problems with actual growth. Everyone in the game grows and has these epiphanies and changes who they are and they go through something. But honestly, it's like Zale and Valerie are just a conduit to tell the story. They are the main character, but nothing really happens with them. You don't really find out too much about them. Even their feelings about being in that situation. It's something that I feel is a miss for me, because these are the characters that we're supposed to attach ourselves to, yet we know very little about them, to be honest. They don't really grow, they don't really tell us anything about their thoughts, their feelings, the idea that they were basically bred to die at the hands of demonic creatures, anything of that. We don't really get to learn too much about these characters, and I do feel like that's such a miss because everyone else in this game does grow. You learn so much about all these other characters except for the main characters, and that just seems weird to me. Now, I do appreciate the fact that they are able to expand on so many other characters, and I do understand the storytelling mechanic of essentially the main characters being a vehicle to tell a story, although with these characters, they aren't just any person. They're incredibly important. They're incredibly important to the game, to the story, to every aspect of it. And when you see that even most of the enemies have a deeper storyline and more character development and growth, that makes you wonder why they didn't add a little bit to the actual main characters of the game, the characters that you're supposed to have the most immersion with. To be honest, those problems don't really overlook the fact that this is a great game and something that should be considered for Game of the Year. Not just because it goes through that check sheet and checks off everything that you want, but because it gives you something that you didn't know you wanted. And for me, that's the most impressive aspect about it, that it takes its story that it wants to tell, its game that it wants you to play, and instead of compromising to the masses, the developer's confidence in their product is something to behold. And it's something that I think many more games need to do, because if you're gonna take your shot, it might as well be your shot and not someone else's. Beyond all that though, there is the part of me that also says it's $34.99. It has no right to be that cheap if you ask me, because this is a long game. This is incredibly beautiful. It is packed with a ton of stuff. This game is easily a $60 game when you see so many other games selling for that price or even more, and yet this one is $34.99. It's definitely worth a pickup, and honestly, when I figure out every single aspect of the game, Sea of Stars gets a 9.7 out of 10 for me. And you know it's a good game when I have to break out the decimals just to avoid that 10 out of 10 rating, but wow, this game it really impressed me, and it came from a point where I wasn't even that excited to play it. Honestly, I played the demo and didn't love it, and so it's like, yeah, whatever, I might grab it, I might not, and I am so glad that I decided to pick it up, because it is one of my contenders for Game of the Year. But let me know your thoughts on Sea of Stars. Have you guys played it? Is it something you're interested in? Do you like RPGs? Do you like the style that this one is, a more linear RPG? Anything and everything in the comment section is so appreciated. I love each and every one of y'all. Thank you guys so much. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.